it's good to be back again, and yeah, nice to be able to share a few. I'm not sure if I went through much last time on like the Gulf War, how much of an extensive workup we did for it. Of course, we didn't go, so I'm not claiming any stolen valour there. But I was just having a look through my logbook recently, and yeah, we did a lot of workup for it in preparation to go. And it started about 2 weeks after Saddam invaded Kuwait. We took off and started doing maritime strikes against the Navy, who just left Jervis Bay on the east coast of Australia 2 weeks after the invasion. So myself and Steve Hobbs, who tragically was killed a few years later in Malaysia. We were number 2 to the CO at about 2:30 in the morning. Still remember that mission, taking off and hitting the ships just off the east coast, south of Sydney there. And we attacked them for about 2.5 hours and recovered to sail with the 2 jets. The next night, another 2 joined us, so we ended up with a 4-ship as the fleet sailed around to the south and then the west, around to Western Australia initially. And it took us about a week to get there. Harpoon was one of our kits, so we were sort of adept at maritime strike, though we got a lot better during the exercise here because it lasted about 3 weeks and it was just full on. One of the interesting things that happened to me on the 3rd night when we were transiting between Sale and Adelaide to the RAAF base Edinburgh, and we attacked the ships, and I remember being at 90 miles from the ships. It was about 200 miles south of the coast, middle of winter basically, pretty cold, pitch black.
Wow.
We're at 300 feet, hand flying it, no radar.
Ooh.
The only thing transmitting was the RAAF, so we were actually at 300 feet, but we didn't have the radar on, no lights, and I just felt this, like we had this deceleration, massive deceleration, and got thrown forward in my seatbelt, and it seemed like half a second later there's a big explosion, and it was fairly instant response. What it was, as I climbed up, I saw one of the engines had come back to around about it was only a compressor stall, but that instant loss of thrust was quite a force, and I'd never experienced another thing like that. And I guess it's just being relatively so fast, and we were doing 540 indicated without being able to see a thing outside. Anyway, we recovered back to the base. One of the 2 times I had an engine failure, as much as all the Tomcat guys complain about the TF30s, both of mine ended up recovering okay and just made precautionary single engine approaches. Meanwhile, that night the boss got in the engine, crawled around it and decided he knew what it was. He talked to maintenance, and the next day we launched again in a 4-ship, attacking the ships south of the Great Australian Bight. We came out of nowhere. They didn't see us until we were basically over the top. So we didn't get any indications from their radars, and it was a pretty successful strike. And it was big sea state. These ships were just pitching up and down and lost in the foam as we went over in a 4-ship in pretty close formation on that first pass. We did a couple more, and then we bingoed out to transit to Pearce, which was still about 500 miles away. So it's quite a long flight. That one, around 4-hour mission with probably about an hour and a half at low level getting in there. And interestingly, that changed a lot of their tactics and how they crewed their operation on the ship and made them better for when they eventually got to the Gulf. Then operated out of Pearce for around about a week in Perth. There was quite a bit of media attention when we arrived there, and then I sort of became a little bit not famous in the squadron, but it was a bit of a catch cry, is that Mickey, we're going to war. Because my boss put his arm around me when we were in the bar, and he was just dead keen to go. So that was like the end of about the end of August, I think, in 1990 when that occurred, and I was a pretty young, relatively green F-111 pilot when that happened. I'd been in the squadron only a few months. Anyway, then we spent the next really 4 or 5 months, I suppose, preparing to go and never actually deploying.
How did you feel like that? Did you want to be deployed?
Well, pretty mixed feelings. I guess I was a little bit apprehensive of, it's a bit scary, I suppose, thinking you're going to go to war, and certainly
Yeah.
the Iraqis were being talked up as having, massive air defences, and, there was quite a bit of risk. I mean, of course, I would have, done what I'd, joined up to do, but I wasn't itching to go and, take out people. That wasn't really my style at the time, and probably never has been. But you do what you have to do, and some people were dead keen to go. Like really, really talked it up. I mean, you never know until you go. I'm certainly not going to claim any, particular bravery on my part or anything like that. I was, apprehensive about it, and just worked at trying to be the best pilot I could be in the squadron as a fairly young and inexperienced one, and really worked on being a good solid wingman throughout that year. We had some really good leadership in the squadron. The CO was, pretty tough, but he made us fly hard and, demanded a lot of us. And I really learnt a lot and warmed to that. And I think my growth through that year compared to the previous year when I was on conversion course was probably the most I've ever had in my career in that 12-month period. He was a real driving force. And he was super keen to project us as, Australia's primary strike squadron, and he was pushing for us to go as much as possible with, the higher ups in the Air Force and politicians. A few months after that, we'd done some more exercise. It was really sort of heading up to where they ended up changing over the ships. But we went up to Tyndall, and it's on my photo, if I get the wrong way, that way. That one there, that one's me taking off with 4 GBU-12s out of Amberley up to Tyndall. And we're in a 4-ship. I think we had 12 bombs between us, and then one poor jet was carrying cargo pods for all our gear. But that photo was published in all the newspapers here. I've got a couple of copies around from that event. But we went up to Tyndall and to the Delamere Air Weapons Range, and we started doing the old tank plinking. So as far as I know, it's been published in a book that we developed a lot of those tactics and then passed them on to the US. Our exchange navigator, Wizzo, had some contacts in Lakenheath, and I think he passed that on through the chain of command, of course. But we worked up dropping GBU-12s from medium altitude, and over the course of about 3 days, we worked up to, I dropped one at 30,000 feet, which I think was probably the highest, maybe certainly since Vietnam War, that we'd been doing any bombing. But we were aiming at car bodies that had been with some IR signature added by our SAS friends, which basically starting doing like them acting as forward air control. They talk us onto the target. We'd be orbiting overhead, pretty much like the drones do these days. So we really were the first drones. And then we worked out how to manage these orbits and then project out into an attack run and dropping the weapons. We found that at that 30,000 feet, that was basically the limit of the laser where it was computing to make its inputs into the weapon system and giving an accurate ballistic weapons solution. And we stopped it there at 30,000, I think. But that one we got a direct hit using a little bit of my nav was doing a bit of whizzo magic, and he adjusted the aim point with the laser slightly to allow for the characteristics of the weapon's impact, and it hit the top of the car body. The guys on the ground said they could see the difference between when it impacts the ground, and it basically looked like an airburst when it hit that.
Nice.
So it was quite effective. Continuing on that, we end up not deploying, and we watched the Gulf War from the crew room, which was pretty enthralling at the time. We certainly saw the RAF guys and the two Johns who were shot down, and watched them, and we were certainly, our hearts were with them and all the others who were involved over there. We were very pleased to see the F-111s make such a massive impact on the war and how they went about their business, especially after that first few days when they went up high and they started using the pave tack and the laser guided bombs to such devastating success. Later on, I did quite a few exercises with some of our special forces there, and doing more of that sort of thing. We developed that, and really the F-111 became the predecessor to the current drone type warfare, using the pave tack, similar sort of things. We were orbiting overhead and being able to stay outside of any ground fire and low altitude surface to air missiles, and gave us a god's eye view of the target. It did bring in some problems in itself, in the fact that when you turn, I guess I could use my model here, the bombs will probably fall off, but when you turn and the pave tack's looking into the target, the wings get in the way. So you have to limit your angle of bank, you have to manage the turn radiuses, and that took quite a lot of work to work out how to do that best. One exercise I went up, and again it was with my American Wizzo. We spent a week up in Townsville doing some work, and we had some bad weather, and it ended up making our own safety altitudes just north of Townsville, up in the mountains, or one of the ports up there, and we were down at 1,000 feet at night, orbiting this target with full flap, trying to keep the angle of bank down to the minimum, and took like 10, 15 degrees, keeping the pave tack on the target and talking to the forces on the ground, acting as their forward air control. So we did that for about a week. That was some pretty interesting stuff. At the culmination of that, I managed to hitch a ride on one of the Black Hawks, and it was quite an interesting sortie. It was a two-ship with snipers out there doing a live fire exercise. And at the completion of that, of course, the pilot was a guy who was on pilot's course at the same time as me, but he's in the army, and he decided to show off his skills at night. And I'm sitting in the back. I'm the only one with NVGs on in the back, looking out the door, and all I can see doing wing overs, coming back down to about, I'd say 50 feet at night, and all I see is a face full of trees.
Terrifying.
Oh, it was fun. I didn't find it that scary. And the guys sitting around me on the floor, they were all finished for the night with their safed up, and they didn't have goggles on. They couldn't see a thing, and they just really didn't even care. If they would have been able to see out, maybe it would have been a bit different.
Yeah. But one question I want to ask you here, Mike, you kind of mentioned the TF-30 engines. Were they completely different from the F-14s, or were they like direct copies, or were they manufactured in the US or Australia?
Oh, they were all, I think, manufactured in the US. I mean, there were overhauls, I believe, were done in Australia at Ambley, and there was engine workshop, and they had test beds, and they did go through some upgrades at times to, different standards. sort of think they work better. By the time I got there, late 80s and all through the 90s, they were working fairly well. The problems I had were caused by there was a strip in the around the compressor blades that was detaching and going through the engine and causing them to stall. And there was a couple of other people who had that, and it was just due to the glue they were using, I believe. So we had some restrictions put on us for a little while they sorted that out. We weren't allowed to do formation takeoffs again until that was solved. Interestingly, I actually was on a formation takeoff during pitch black one exercise, and my lead had an engine failure. He certainly had an afterburner fail on him, and we're doing about 100, 120 knots when he rejected his takeoff, and I had to squeeze past on the right-hand side as he came to a stop. And I tell you what, the runway felt fairly narrow that day.
I could imagine.
Because the F-111's a pretty big wingspan at 70 feet each.
A big bird,
it certainly looked pretty close. No, I didn't have it that often. I mean, all you had, the original ones I had were those plastic throwaway Kodak.
Yeah, so the disposable ones.
You had about 20 shots and then throw it away. Then I had a few other smaller ones, but I probably was pretty slack about taking photos, and video cameras were rare. One of my mates had his parents, and he's got some good stuff, and I try and get it off him one day, but he's always, a little bit busy to do the editing. And just getting it transferred from VHS is hard these days.
Oh, God, yes.
And some of the other ones we had were the pneumatic tapes, which was in the aircraft. There's some of that going around, and you've seen in the PaveTac. I don't really have any, but I haven't got anything to play it with because they're that 3/4 inch, tape. It's a rarity to see anything these days. But gee, I wish we had one. I mean, GoPros would have been fantastic sitting there on the nose.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I don't think people realise how fast they were. I mean, we cruised everywhere at 480 knots. Just that was our cruising for range at low level, which is at the high end for a lot of other fast jets. When we wanted to go fast, we'd just take it up to 540 or 600 knots, or basically transonic. Given we were out over land most of the time, we weren't allowed to go supersonic, but we took it right up to the edge there at around 0.95 on exercises, and we'd be down at 200 feet, just staying as low as we can. And it is pretty fast when you're zipping through the valleys and across the trees and rolling upside down. To stay down low. It would have been great to have a bit more footage, but that's the limitations of the day.
Absolutely. I'm going to get a bit nerdy here because you said so you kind of cruised around about 480. What wing would you be in? Would you be in 45 wing, or what wing would you be in?
Yeah, 44 degrees gave us both sets of spoilers. Yeah, 45. They started to lock out the inboard spoilers, which gave us some extra roll control. And then was at 47, the outboard spoilers started locking out. So they weren't available. Then it was just stab control. So 44 gave us a lot of roll control in that mid-range wing sweep. Pretty much 10% of your airspeed, that's what you set the wing for. So if you went to 540 knots, you probably actually want about a 54-degree wing sweep. Just a bit less drag. And of course, as you got the wings further back, it actually rolled faster. But I think you've had maybe interviewed Jeff Gwynn before, and he talks about it rolls, but it doesn't turn very much. You've got one turn at 72 wing, it'll get some angle of attack on, and then it'll just mush. But and that's certainly something you had to be careful of. But yeah, that 44 degrees was a general all-purpose wing sweep for us. Plus being a manual, it added another complication. So generally, if you wanted to run away, lit the afterburners and pulled the wings back. There was a lockout at 54, which would sort of stop it there, and you could slide with your thumb and then pull it back to the 72, and then you could just leave it and run. Conversely, if you're going to turn, crank on the turn and just push the wings forward and try and hit about middle of the road, which is around about that 44-degree mark. If you start getting towards 26, then you might end up with speed limitations. Because while the aircraft didn't have a speed limit as such, with the wings forward it did, and the old red bar came up and gave you a bit of a warning, and you'd get a reduced speed light if that happened. 26 wing, when we did loops, we were sort of at 450 knot entry speed. We were starting to get close to that limit. Get the wings back to 35 and you can probably be around 550 knots, and 44 up to pretty much Mach 1, maybe getting close to that. Yeah. But if you wanted to go supersonic, you just want them all the way back and just reduce that drag. And it would just punch through the number pretty quickly. You get a little bit of a slower acceleration as you went transonic and you're in that critical drag rise. And then once you went through the number, that drag dropped out and the aircraft would just keep going and going. I didn't get to do it that much at low level because, as I said, most of the time we were over land and we weren't allowed to, or we were close inshore, and we could cause a lot of damage to shipping maritime assets if we went over them, especially sailboats and things. So we were pretty careful about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you and your viewers have seen the Evans Head range hut and what happens to it, and the guys went a little bit too far.
The smashing the windows, yes. It's a good video, though.
Great video. I just can't claim it was me. I was off having my slow speed experience in the PC9 at the time. I just left.
Yeah.
Gone off to be a QFI instructor pilot for our American friends.
Yeah, exactly. But Mike, I've kind of hijacked the conversation talking about wing sweep here, but do you have maybe one or two more memorable stories to wrap up this brilliant interview?
Maybe tell you the story about, did I mention the mid-air I nearly had in Malaysia?
I don't believe so.
Explain it a little bit more detail. It's come up fairly recently, so I thought I'll go through it again. But I was leading a two-ship down towards Singapore from Malaysia. So we're heading south, got wingmen out in spread formation, and we see some aircraft up ahead. I think they were around about our 11 o'clock. We turned towards them, trying to ID them and assess them. Now, the opposition were F5s and from Singapore and F-18s from Australia. So we identified them as A4s. So immediately I started turning away from them, but fairly gently. And they started a brake turn, and they were on the common frequency. So I could hear them calling the brake, and I tried to tell them that we're friendlies. And so we're in this belly turn. I'm on the left, my wingman's on the right, and we're turning away, trying to not threaten them. And after a few seconds, and I guess my mistake was I went belly up to the A4s, so I couldn't see them anymore. I'm on the left, and as we're turning away, and we're at 500 feet at about 500 odd knots at this point, and this A4 went through my flight path at 90 degrees, and I could see the guy's helmet. I could just about read his name, and it just went straight through our path, and I'm sure he was looking at my wingman and didn't see us at all. And, we're doing 1,000 feet a second, and I reckon he went within 200 feet of straight in front of us. So, pretty close to impact. My nav just about, jumped out of his skin. I did too a little bit, but we called to knock it off. gave up the target run at that point, which was somewhere in Singapore, and we flew around Singapore for around about at 1,500 feet. I just got my wingman join combat formation, so I didn't have to worry about him for a while. We let our heart rate settle down, and then as we came around the south side of Changi Airport, back to the eastern side of Singapore, and then just straight back into the exercise again. Had about that 10-minute breather, reset, got the heart rate down back to normal, and then pressed on and finished off the mission, which involved another target up in Malaysia, and then back into Butterworth. For I think we did a target run there as well. But yeah, that one was quite an experience, and one of the closest I've ever come to actually having an accident. And I'll take a little bit of the blame for turning so that I couldn't see them anymore. But they wouldn't listen to me on the radio either, and that was something that came up in the debrief. And I don't know how they thought. We're on the same side, and I don't know how they ID'd F-111s as bad guys. But anyway, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. But where were the A4s from then? If you were talking about
Singapore.
I didn't know that A4s in Singapore.
A4s and F5s. And there was us and F-18s. I think on that exercise we had MiG-29s on some operating out of Kuantan. And back at Butterworth they had Hawks, and that was pre-F-18 in Malaysia. But definitely they had MiG-29s by that point. Didn't end up mixing up with them. I did bomb them at Kuantan one night and ran the PAVTAC over them. That was interesting on the tape. I do have another funny story about PAVTAC.
Go for it.
Well, I've got a quick one that's popped up not long after that, when we were up in Darwin doing pitch black, and I don't know why it was a single ship, but it was over the sea, and we found a submarine. So, of course, we went back around, rolled the PAVTAC pod out, and ran a simulated laser run across it and bombed it. Went back to Darwin, landed, showed it to the boss, and he just loved it because it was a PAVTAC getting a submarine out in the ocean. By the time we came back for that second pass, they were already trying to dive and get back down. So it was too late.
Yeah, but sorry. You also went to Oshkosh recently. What was that like, Mike?
Yeah, went to Oshkosh for the second time. Had a fantastic time. Managed to get the whole week there from beginning to end. Met some fantastic people. They really looked after me. You know who.
Yep.
Love the demos. Just old aircraft, World War II, and I personally love hearing the afterburners. F-35 was fantastic. The Marine Corps F-35B was brilliant, doing hovering right in front of us, and that's the first time I've seen that. F-22 again was brilliant. Unfortunately, it didn't fly as much as last year. I'm not sure why, but maybe they had some tech issues. But it is just spectacular, and the twilight shows with the afterburners and noise, feel just fantastic. The older aircraft, like the Thunderbolt Mustangs, you name it. I think we've got some friends out there that love the Broncos and some other aircraft. It's just a full-on aviation extravaganza for a week. And, you get your own air show every afternoon from about 3 till 6 or 7. And then on Wednesday and the Saturday nights, they effectively have 2 by having the night show. MiG-17s, they get down so low, and they relatively small, so they actually seem like they're the fastest planes out there. but got to meet some of the guys, some fantastic aircrew, U2 pilot. I ran into an ex F-16 guy, and I think he flew F-111s too for a while. So he retired. We just met chatting under the 767. Oh, sorry, what is it? The tanker out there, and yeah, just had a good catch up with people, met some new friends, and
Brilliant.
keep in contact with them. So I'd thoroughly recommend Oshkosh to anyone who's thinking about it, and it's a great week and relatively cheap. You become a member, and for 160, 170 US, you can go for a whole week.
Wow, that is cheap.
Well, compared to going to Avalon, I'm not sure what it is
Or
in the
RAAF,
UK.
yeah. Yeah, it's about 80 it's about, what did you pay, 76, 77 pounds or something for one day at RAAF on the Saturday, each ticket. So it's quite expensive.
Yeah, well, as an EAA member, which was, $40, $50, that entitles you to get a weekly pass. You can get two for that for about 160, I think it was. So, a bit over $200, and you can go for a whole week.
Brilliant.
Just the best value for money, and you get to meet some great people, and of course, a lot of people are there for more than one day, and so it's just, a lot of social events there as well. I thank my friend who got me onto it. We're old squadron mates back from pilot's course, and he's been quite a few times, and I can't recommend it enough.
Brilliant. I could divide the audience here. What was your favourite display at Oshkosh?
I just have to say the F-22. It is just so awesome being up close, right on the flight line with that. And you know what? They did almost a synchro pair, the F-22 and the F-35 on the Saturday show. The F-35 finished a pass, and the F-22 took off and did his vertical Cobra maneuver takeoff, and just the way they synced that up and combined it, it was just brilliant. And they came around the tower at the sunset together, and it just looked fantastic. So, I just love the speed and the noise, and they both did a brilliant job. So hats off to both the pilots in that and to their crews that look after the jets and get them going. I've followed enough of the F-22 demo team interviews with like Raz last year and Laz this year, as how they go about it, and they're borrowing aircraft and then their crew, how they get them together. It's no small task doing that, and with borrowed aircraft, I suppose, on that airshow routine.
And talking about air shows, are you going to come over to Riyadh? Am I going to be able to have a pint with you at an air show next year, maybe?
Oh, I'd love to, but it does conflict with Oshkosh a little bit, doesn't it?
It does.
Maybe we should go to Lima together.
Oh,
yes.
Like
you have a good time there.
Because it's every 2 years, isn't it?
As well, isn't it?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. I think it's a couple of 2 years, and then we'll meet up, Mike, and we can have a pint. First one on me, and we can watch some fast jets and afterburners. But what you're currently up to, and have you got any books in the works? I get that question a few times, and saying, is Mike going to write a book? Are you going to write a book?
Well, at the moment, I don't really have time. I have to work too much. It's like someone's been after me to write down these stories that we're talking about now, and just in long form. And I'm just finding it a little bit difficult with how much work I've been doing outside of reminiscing. So maybe one day I will. I'm not sure I'm talented enough. I have done a couple of shorter articles, and they probably could use a little bit of editing. But whether I could ever write a book, maybe that's something for the future when I do, hang up the flying gloves and, you know, call it quits.
Absolutely.
But you know, one of these days I will. You know, I've been blessed to have a pretty good career. You know, I've had a fantastic military
Absolutely.
career, and then later on professionally flying throughout, and thoroughly enjoy it and try and pass on, you know, my stories and, you know, my love of aviation. You know, which I probably got from my dad. You know, I'd like to, you know, thank him, both my parents, for, you know, really helping me and pushing me through into making the decisions that I did to get me, you know, into the Air Force, and the determination to make it happen and get through all the training, which was, you know, it's not easy. Even when you get there, you know, I'm sure you find that from all your guests. It's, you know, pretty tough,
Yeah.
tough course, and, you know, the resilience to push through when things are difficult. So one day I might get pen to paper and publish them. I don't know if anybody's read them, though, Mike.
Well, I certainly would. I'm sure a lot of our viewers would as well. But Mike, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to say thank you very much for coming back on the show and sharing a few stories with us.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike. Anytime, and look forward to the future, maybe.